I'd like to wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom. This has been a week of many firsts, and this is a first for me to use this avenue to put together words of Torah to offer at this time. We find ourselves here on Friday looking towards Shabbat, and as the sun sets, creating for us a meaningful experience that looks quite different, certainly than last week and probably than any other week that we could have imagined. Shabbat lends us the opportunity to reflect, to think back on our positive experiences, on the places where we've struggled. It's a time for us to come together with loved ones, even if it means virtually. And it's a time for us to ground ourselves, a time for us to make sure that we are here in the present. As I reflect on the week, the thought that comes to mind for me is being overwhelmed by kindness. Kindness of my synagogue community, kindness of my brothers and sisters at large, even kindness of the stranger. As I reflect on looking back to the past couple of days, all of us have found ourselves in a place of vulnerability, and there are various ways that we could respond in these times of need, and we've chosen to do so from a place of love and from a place of really rising to the occasion, really being there for one another and exhibiting caring actions. And I think it's important as we enter to Shabbat to really reflect on the power and the meaning of those actions. It's an example of how we could create beauty even when things feel quite meek and quite dark outside. So this is one of a few offerings that I'm excited to be able to put out there virtually for this Shabbat. In a moment, I'll be delivering a more or less formal sermon. Keep a lookout. Shortly, our cantorial student, Daniel Geigerman, he will be presenting a whole series of melodies for you to sing along with on this Shabbat experience. And there'll also be a much more kid-focused experience that you too could experience. So I hope whether one of these opportunities or all three of them are helpful to you, I hope that they bring meaning to this Shabbat. So I'm going to offer some words of Torah. I call this teaching Making Meaning on Shabbat and beyond. So wow, using a very technical Yiddish term, one from a language that I'm very familiar with, I'm exaggerating. This week has been Meshuggah. Our world has turned upside down. We find ourselves cooped up at home. We're making brand new routines. And now as we get ready for Shabbat, we're faced with a very important question for us to pursue. How is it that we make the most of our time? And how do we make meaning, especially in moments of struggle? If we look to our Torah portion this week, Vayikahel Pekudei, we find that the Israelites are similarly motivated. Suddenly they are free from slavery, but this newfound freedom presents them with challenges. We read in our parasha that Moses convenes the entire people. And just as the laws of the tabernacle end with the laws of Shabbat, so too the process of building it begins with the reiteration of the holiness of Shabbat. In other words, we don't get swept up in the act of physical building. The intention, as in the meaning, is core. And we know this lesson well. It's times when we gather on Shabbat that we aspire to feel the closeness of community, to live and breathe Torah, and to exhibit our commitment to the eternal. Today we do so in our homes, and for many of us we do so virtually. And we do the best that we can. One of my teachers on this topic is Viktor Frankl. He is best known for his masterful book, Man's Search for Meaning. Frankl reflects on his internment at Auschwitz and how he fostered precious light even when all around him he was surrounded by darkness. Frankl tells an important story. He shares that upon entering the camp he had to surrender his clothes and in turn he inherited worn-out rags of an inmate who was already sent on to the gas chamber. He was hoping to find the pages of his life work in this coat, that is the scientific manuscript that he had dedicated his life to preparing. But instead, he found in the pocket of this newly acquired coat one single page torn out from a Siddur. And it was on this page from the Siddur that were the words of the Shema. Was this a coincidence? Or perhaps it was a challenge to live his life a challenge to live his thoughts instead of merely putting them on paper. Frankl goes on to detail that we cannot avoid suffering, but we can choose how it is that we cope with suffering, and we could even find meaning from it and move forward with renewed purpose. There are forces beyond our control that can take away everything, but they can't take away the ability to choose how to respond. Frankl lists 3 possible sources for meaning. First, there is work, as in doing something of significance. Second, there is love, as in caring for another person. And third, there is finding courage, even in a difficult time. We construct meaning. It is not something the universe offers us. Meaning can be carefully assembled by resistance and refusal to collaborate in the face of difficulty. It's on Shabbat that we're called to live Frankl's advice. We become the Israelites as we physically and spiritually strengthen our temple and connect to the divine. We have a weekly opportunity to make sure that we are doing a good job with the gift of time, and we're reminded that every moment is precious. Let's take a closer look at each of Frankl's criteria. First, there is work. More specifically, there is our everyday life. Do we find meaning in that which we do? Are we making a difference in the world? How do we feel when we get up in the morning? Frankl details how the morning in the concentration camp was the most difficult time of the day. For most, it was filled with dread. It was a chance to reflect on how much was lost. But he found courage to reframe the day, to see the potential to act with kindness, to imagine a world beyond captivity. On a personal note, I have to share that I feel blessed as a rabbi. I get to live what I love doing most. I recognize that it's not the case with all of our vocations, but we're all called to answer the question, how can we reframe our routines to include that which excites us? Secondly, love, specifically directing our affection to another human being for whom we care for in a deep and precious way. Our world is a lonely place, perhaps more so than in the past. We emphasize the individual in our Western society rather than collectively appreciating all that we share. Frankl focuses his attention on the love of his wife that he yearned to reunite with. He also made a point of exhibiting kindness in the camps even as there was great pressure to be selfish. Love could even be contributed to the stranger. We're reminded to prioritize the we instead of the me. And then lastly, courage, as in refusing to succumb to fear. No one or thing can take away bravery and strength. We hold this light deep within. It is true, there is so much that we don't control. We can direct our inner being, and we could even shine a light in the face of darkness. We've come a long way since wandering in the wilderness. Yes, I know, it does feel like this week we have been continuing this wandering. What direction are we to turn? How can we spice up our days? Who do we look to? Well, I hope that with my words we can learn from Viktor Frankl and that we can also follow the Israelites. We do so as we get in touch with our inner light, as we intentionally apply it to that which we love, and as we direct it forward with hope and care. I pray that we embrace our time and that we make meaningful moments, because we can't waste even a second. I can feel the cloud of holiness, also described in this Torah portion, descending upon us as we commit ourselves to this precious practice. I wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom. May you find strength even in this difficult time. Take care.